The Azerothian Archives is a new organization that seems to be something of a stand-in for archaeology. One of the activities introduced by this organization has been the Big Dig at Traitor's Rest, an area in the Azure span that has always felt a bit mysterious due to the skeleton of a giant two-headed dragon that can be found here. Over the last few weeks, we've finally gotten a chance to learn more about the history behind this place. In the first week, we were introduced to Traitor's Rest and given a brief description of its backstory. Our lead archivist, Edward this really cool Forsaken guy, has been smitten by Sindragosa ever since he was a child. When the opportunity came to travel to the Dragon Isles, he of course took it, and while we've been messing around with Razageth and Fyrak and all of that, Edward has been happily studying Sindragosa's memoirs at Algothar Academy. Though this is news to us, we're told Traitor's Rest was already known to Azerothian scholars to be the location of a famous battle between Neltharian's troops, most notably a two-headed dragon, and the cultures of the Dragon Isles eons ago. According to Edward, the real surprise is evidence that the blue dragonflight was involved. Presumably he's asked them for more information and was refused an answer because Edward says the blue dragons are staying mum, but he's determined to solve the mystery anyway, for Sindragosa. During our investigations, we discovered that a group from the Blue Dragonflight traveled to Traitor's Rest to meet up with a Scale Commander Aberth. If this name seems familiar, it's because players met Aberth during our return to the Forbidden Reach. While grappling with the Drakthea's legacy, Emberthal faced failed Scale Commander Aberth along with several others who now haunt the cave that Neltharion used to test his Drakthea in. Emberthal passed this test, but Aberth was apparently found wanting. However, we learned during an Azerothian Archives techno-scrying mission that Aberth actually survived the trial, but that Neltharion had him killed afterwards, stating that he would allow nothing to stand in the way of his creation. So far, the Azerothian Archives do not yet seem to know what this creation was. More on that later. Either way, the group at Traitor's Rest apparently anticipated an attack from Neltharion, and they were right. From the get-go, the information we learned in the first week does raise a lot of questions, and not the ones being asked by the archives. First of all, the idea that there was a famous battle between Neltharion and the creatures of the Dragon Isles long before his fall and betrayal is a bit of a surprise, considering the fact that back then he was a trusted leader. Scale Commander Aberth in his Wayne's presence is another confusing mystery. The Drakthea were a closely guarded secret by Neltharion, kept hidden in the Forbidden Reach and under his command with a powerful Titan artifact, the Oathbinder. Almost the moment this artifact broke, Neltharion organized for Malygos to put the Drakthea under a stasis, and when he did, Malygos was surprised to learn of the Drakthea's existence. The idea that sometime before then some Drakthea were merrily disobeying orders to hang out in the Azure span with blue dragons, none of whom mentioned these creatures to Malygos, is weird to say the least. What's more, while we do know from the Blue Dragonfly questline that Sindragosa had her suspicions about Neltharion that she regretted keeping to herself, the idea that she outright conflicted with him and was aware that he had created the Drakthea and she still didn't say anything to Malygos about any of it is outright baffling. But this is just the first week, so let's take a look at what we learned next. Over the next few weeks, we learned that the Blue Dragonflight and Drakthea were joined by a group of Tuskar, led by a strategist named Umtiel, and, in another major surprise, a group of Gerardin, whose leader's name was Garin. Gerardin are not known to be friendly towards dragons, but it seems that their involvement may have been inspired by an unusual relationship. In fact, Edward outright speculates that Umtiel and Garin were actually romantically involved. Sadly, the relationship ended in tragedy. In the 5th week, we learned that Garin the Gerardin was a traitor who was secretly working as an agent of Neltharion. An evil Gerardin. Groundbreaking. Based on the body we uncovered, Garin was killed personally by Umtilla. In his records, Edward speculates once again that there was more than simple friendship between these two. It appears that Garin fell early in the battle, and Umtilla's bone dagger was found near his remains. If what I suspected about them were true, I would not have blamed her for felling the man herself. Despite the Battle of Traitor's Rest famously involving Neltharion and the creatures of the Dragon Isles, but also no one knew about the Blue Dragonflight's involvement, or the Drakthea, or the Tuskar, or the Gerardin until recently, leaving us wondering exactly what people thought the famed Battle of Traitor's Rest was before this dig. Neltharion's motives for attacking the area remained a mystery the archivists were determined to uncover. Ultimately, we discover that he was after a certain tome that was being kept at the Azure archives, and the attack on Traitor's Rest was meant to be a distraction. This is, in fact, what prompted Sindragosa's involvement. While she didn't know which tome Nalthirion was after, she had her suspicions, and so organized for several important volumes to be moved to other locations for safekeeping. Finally, when she was able to confirm his target and that it was safely hidden away from the archives, she joined the others at Traitor's Rest and helped save the day, defeating Nalthirion's dragon personally. Edward may be satisfied with our findings, but I still have questions. First of all, I still don't quite understand why, after this battle, Nalthirion was still liked and trusted and apparently never really questioned about famously sending a two-headed dragon to attack a place in the Azure span. Secondly, the fact that the blue dragons, Girardin and Tuskar, all apparently knew about Drakthea, but not one person mentioned it to Malygos or anyone else, is a mystery that's never addressed. It's also confusing why Nalthirion still went ahead with using the Drakthea after this, trusting the Oathbinder to control them despite this evidence that the artifact failed in its purpose, and only later had them put in a stasis after the Oathbinder broke. Maybe Aberoth, having managed to somehow break free of the Oathbinder's influence, knew how badly Nalthirion would react if he ever found out about Drakthea outside his control, and so swore everyone who met the Drakthea to secrecy. It doesn't seem that Nalthirion actually attended the battle himself, so possibly he never heard about the Drakthea's involvement, despite having a spy at Traitor's Rest. After all, Garin was discovered and killed, so maybe the Girardin never got the chance to let Nalthirion know about the Drakthea presence. Sindragosa's decision to just forget to mention the fact that she had to hide an important tome from Malygos's best friend also remains odd. Possibly she worried that Malygos trusted Nalthirion enough to simply offer to lend him the tome, but if that was the case, why would Nalthirion have to try conspire to steal it in the first place? Finally, I'm intrigued by Nalthirion's two-headed dragon. Traitor's Rest is still haunted by the spirit of this two-headed, shadow-flamed infused, malevolent beast, and, in fact, every dig ends with needing to once again defeat Doomshadow. Edward calls the creature Nalthirion's two-headed experiment, and throughout the dig refers to it as a proto-dragon, though it really just looks like a standard chimera to me. Could it be that chimera in general are the result of Nalthirion's experiments, like Slitherdrakes? Or, and this is probably more likely, was the chimera model just the closest thing to a two-headed dragon model that the quest designers had to work with? As I mentioned before, Nalthirion later had Aberoth murdered, stating that he wanted nothing to stand in the way of his creation. Clearly, he was still working on something, and Nalthirion's family has become somewhat known for their draconic creations that result from experiments, from the Twilight Dragonflight to Chromatus. The name of the tome that Nalthirion was after has been lost to the ages, but maybe it contains some information that might have helped Nalthirion perfect his experiment, whatever it was. At the moment, it's hard to know for sure, but for now, this is where the story of Traitor's Rest seems to end.